edit the video as we go along. Good afternoon. My name is Carl. I'm from PQRS, and I also represent the Association for Renewable Energy Practitioners. I chat to Sean every now and again. I think I've met most of you guys. May have been at some of the events that Sean was hosting, or where Sean was involved. So I think Sean is kind of the link over here between everybody in this meeting. What I wanted to do was to have a meeting where we could share some of the information of what we find in industry that are causing issues with the products that you guys sell or install. I heard from Sean about a week ago that there's a new SABS standard where you're not allowed to install solar panels on top of bare galvanized iron. I'm familiar with some of the roofing products where you're not allowed to connect bare galvanized material to some of the roofing sheets. So I thought it was important for us to have an event that we could record, that I would be able to circulate on social media so that we get a bit more traction opposed to just a normal face-to-face event or something to that effect. I did not set up a formal agenda, so I didn't have a specific plan with regards to who was going to be first to present. And maybe what we should do is just quickly go around all the attendees. If every guy can just introduce himself quickly, and then Sean, maybe you should start, seeing that you've got a presentation. I don't know if any of the other guys have a slide deck or presentations that you want to share. I would take that as an no.
No, sorry. I'm good.
Okay, cool.
Pictures and
Sean, would you like to just do like a 30-second intro, and then we can just jump to Johan, Sebastian, and Vaughan, and then cool. You can start your presentation.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Sean. I'm the director for K2 in South Africa, and we specialize in mounting structures.
Johan Trerecht of Bluescope Steel, so supplier of premium Colorbond and Zinc-Loom steel to the market. Youngman Roofing is one of our biggest customers, and they profile the material. So we supply the input coil, pre-painted steel coil, and not roof sheets. And then our downstream partners, the likes of Youngman and some other roll formers in the market, will then supply the contractor or the asset owner with a profiled sheet.
I'm Sebastian Ruipieper. I'm the Managing Director of EOT Fixing Solutions Southern Africa. We're part of the EOT group of fastener specialists. We're a manufacturer for solar, specifically of the bimetallic fasteners that are used to prevent corrosion in solar installations.
Vaughan Botha, work for Youngman Roofing. I'm the technical consultant or manager in the Western Cape, but I oversee most of the technical issues in the country. But we are a roll former. We supply all your standard corrugated IBR, and then we have our specialized clip-based systems like Diamond Deck 407 and then the Springlock 700, and all your accompanying insulation products with that as well.
Maybe we should start with Sean's presentation, and then from there on we can jump through to the various specialists that are in the meeting today. It would be interesting to get your feedback.
This is just some of the incidents that's kind of happened in the last year, where we've looked at reasons for structures failing, product failing, material issues, and what those issues was. And I think the reason we brought this group together was we have experts in every field here. Sebastian is the expert in fastening. Vaughan, obviously, in roofing and wind loads and everything else. Johan in material that he supplies. And this was in the city of Cape Town, where the panels blew off in Wales Street. So that's, I'm sure we all know, a highly populated area in Cape Town, Bantry Bay. Yes, some of these installations were, or these failures were during the storms in Cape Town, but some of them were not. Some of them were general windy days in Cape Town that we actually lost systems. You gone, Carl? So that was 500. That was in the storms in Cape Town.
Are all these photos from, or most of these photos to now, from recent installations or recent?
It was all in the last year.
Okay.
That was in Joburg.
That looks like a ballasted system.
That's Bantry Bay.
Is that also Bantry Bay?
Camps Bay.
Camps Bay.
I suppose a ballast system.
Ballasted system, yeah.
Yeah. Ballast slash cement brick looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not sure cement brick. This is corrosion that happened on the coast in Jeffreys.
What are we looking at? Are we looking
Look at the actual clamp itself. If you continue the slides, you'll see some more of this clamp where it's completely disintegrated. And this is mixed metals. I'm not sure exactly what components they used here. But I mean, you can see the corrosion. I mean, the clamp's completely disintegrated.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can definitely see it there.
This was at Mustec, I think in Joburg,
Yes.
which we're not 100% sure what caused the failure on that installation, whether it was wind or just product.
Okay.
I mean, have a look here. So the problem is that these clamps are widely available from China. They all look identical. They all look exactly the same. It's a 40mm clamp. The guys don't understand, right? If you look on the side here, you'll see there's a little insert that's been pushed underneath because this clamp is the wrong size. So they've added a little extra in. And yeah, and if you notice the clamp at the bottom, it's not even sitting in the rail properly. This is the first point where failure takes place. Is once these clamps start coming loose, because it's the same clamp that's basically used across various rail profiles, and they're not designed or tested in that rail profile. Again, I mean, I think Vaughan would love this one where the stuff's lying on the roof and this nice rusted rod that's holding the panels up.
That looks like a threaded bar.
Yeah, it's a threaded bar. It's a custom job. So they've basically taken a clamp, modified it to create the pitch solution because the customer wanted the panel pitched on a standing seam.
And there are loads of different standing seam profiles.
100%.
And they're all not the same, especially, sorry, Sean, I'm jumping. Especially
you're the expert here.
Our profiles, this looks like this might be either a brown bolt or our Diamond profile. And you know for yourself, Sean, it's to get that clamp right. It takes some doing.
Yeah, I mean, we spent almost a year trying to develop a clamp now, just to try and get the right fastening positions and ensuring that it won't fall off.
Because there's no body actually to grab onto, and then Sorry.
And that's another interesting fact. So if you take brown bolt in particular, if you look at a clip lock roof, you're not allowed to clamp on the fold over on the seam.
Yeah.
Where on a brown bolt roof, it's recommended that you clamp on the fold over on the seam. Now, if the installer doesn't know that, he's going to clamp on the normal seam because he's been told on a clip lock, the opposite. Yeah. So these are the little issues and stuff that we have with actual installation.
Yeah, before we go on, seeing that we've got this photo, and maybe Vaughan has a photo that can show the different profiles, but how do we actually identify the profile? Because to identify the the holder or the mechanism that's going to hold your panels onto this profile, you need to identify the profile, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's important to work very closely with your mounting structure supplier. The problem is that most distributors don't take it serious, and even the installers. Your installer will plan his whole installation until the last point, and then on the last minute, he'll order a mounting structure. We had a project that we worked on in Sea Point where the engineer specified a clip lock roof. I think, Sebastian, you worked on that one with me, where when we got to site, I got a video clip from site saying where the installer basically tapped my clamp off the standing seam and said, your clamp doesn't work. And I said, well, it's not the clamp designed for that profile. However, the engineer's document for the whole discussion specified that it was a clip lock roof. So now all the products have been ordered and is on site, and that's the wrong component. Then, because that roof sheet has pulled off 5 times off the roof already, Sebastian suggested that we screw it down. So we flew screws in for the project, only to find out afterwards that they forgot to specify that there was an insulation between the roof sheet and the purlin. So the screws were too short. So they had to do a second round and order more screws. So project planning is very important. When the guys don't do site visits and they don't check things beforehand, all these little things are missed. The installer gets these clamps. He's assuming it's the right clamp. He simply goes to site and he installs. Well, it should be right because I was supplied the product.
Yes.
When something goes wrong, they point back to the supplier or the manufacturer saying, you supplied me the wrong product. But he didn't actually do a site inspection. You wouldn't do an electrical installation without doing a site inspection. And the same should apply here. There shouldn't be an installation before a proper site inspection has been done.
So how do we, if I just have a photo of the roof profile, Vaughan, would that be sufficient for you to identify whether it's one of your profiles?
Yeah. Now, look, ours is our profiles are very distinct. Your 700 or your clip-based profiles, they all look very, very similar. And I think this is where the confusion comes in. Where ours is very, very distinct compared to the other 700 profiles. And also our clamp, the clamp that fits on our profile, and yours does, Sean, but not every clamp will fit on that profile.
The problem with Vaughan's profile is slightly wider and it's curved. And if you don't understand where the difference comes in and you try and use a normal clip lock clamp on that profile, it will look like it fits until you knock it. And then it just clips off.
Yeah, and I've got some photos when you're done. I'll show you of an issue on a project where they're having issues where it's actually pushing through the seam. So it's over tightened and it's actually torn the rib. And it's major issues. But I digress. But Carl, to answer your question, if I get a picture of it, I'll know what profile it is, and if I don't, I'll point you in the right direction to know what profile it is. I pretty much know all the profiles, and they have their small distinctions, but I can identify them if need be.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. Sean, do you want to say something about this? Because this
was a runoff problem that we had on the site, and it's an industrial area, but it's not an industrial area where there's a lot of products that are being produced and stuff. And these rust spots started developing on the roof. And this is the discussion we had last week, where I believe you're actually not allowed to install on a galvanized roof. And
that's correct.
There's an interesting...
I'll chip in there when you're done.
Yeah, I'd actually like that, John.
Yeah.
It'll save me from trying to have to read it. But there's a chemical compound on the glass that with that running off and onto the aluminium, onto the galvanized sheeting, is causing these rust components.
Yeah. So what you're seeing there is that's a classic example of inert catchment. So where runoff from one surface then actually carries all of that salt. So it doesn't need to rain. It can just be condensation. And that will create that galvanic cycle or the electrolytic cell. And obviously your aluminium is more inert than galv, so it's going to take longer to corrode or to break down. And what happens is your aluminium salts and carbonates will form during the whole corrosion process. That sits on top of the surface. So as soon as that drips down, it basically tells the zinc-coated sheet, listen, here's something foreign. I need to now sacrifice the zinc to protect the underlying steel. So it sacrifices the zinc. The zinc breaks down much quicker than on the normal areas where you don't have that inert catchment or that dropping. And what then happens, it accelerates that whole corrosion cycle. And once the zinc layer is depleted, it now gets down to the bare metal and it starts to corrode. Benefit of the AZ technology, where you've got 55% aluminium in your alloy coating and then 43.6% zinc, and that's what BlueScope supplies. That's the standard zinc alum material, but it's also the base alloy layer of color bond, is where we say, listen, this is particular to galv, but it doesn't transfer into the AZ market. So you can successfully install PV arrays and systems onto zinc alum, and you won't get this. Now, we've got case studies and projects from Malaysia and Australia that's been doing PV far longer than South Africa, where it's installed directly onto zinc alum, and there's bare zinc alum, and there's no issues like what we're seeing on the screen. Our warranty stays intact. I've got a technical bulletin 36 that I can also share with you. It's also available on our website, and that just details this. Same, to make it easier, we all know gutter systems, so you would not necessarily specify a aluminium zinc roof then to have the runoff flow into a galv gutter, because the galv gutter is going to perforate.
Wow.
I've had a similar case, and it had nothing to do with PV. Chatting to a friend of mine the other day, where they installed a seamless gutter system.
Yeah.
And take the roof into consideration, and there where the water runoff was onto the roof. He's now got a hole in his roof.
That's it.
His whole ceiling in his garage.
Yeah.
He had to replace his roof because of that.
And that is more. I understand all of the salts and the chemical compounds in your the glass panel coating system is also very scientific, and every supplier of the PV panels will use their own bespoke or custom IP, whatever, technology to coat it for durability. And usually those coatings do contain some metal in some form, or metal iron. And that runoff, so we don't know necessarily how that is going to interact. It can be chrome based, can even be titanium and all of those funny metals that gets into contact. So they obviously do oxidize and then get carried onto the material surface. So yeah, that's that. It's a problem.
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry, Carl. Just on this quickly, I just want to jump in here on with regards to you guys having projects or supplying out there. You'd also not be made aware that these roofs are going onto zinc roofs or AZ roofs. I know majority of the roofs in Cape Town will be AZ technology roofs, but your biggest issues will be inland, where your zinc.
Where it's expected that you're not having C issues.
Yeah, and that's the biggest majority of roofs in those areas are galv or Z275 pre-painted material. Yeah. And that's a major issue, and I don't think a lot of these guys will know that. 90% of the people won't know that you're gonna pick up this exact issue with these roof sheets until it's too late. So it's how would this be a question you would ask before supplying?
We do. We generally ask for site material and stuff, what type of material it is, because I think, Sebastian, you can fill in here as well, but your screw strength is also determined by the material that you're screwing into. So you have less pull-out on an alu-zinc screw than what you would have on a steel. Am I saying that correctly? So your steel roof sheet will be stronger when it comes to pull-out forces than what your aluminium would. So it's important to know those things.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you will have an issue. The pull-out force completely changes.
Yeah. It's just in my back of my mind is that, all right, you guys are asking the question. We would ask that question, but majority of the times I'm just know that inland you're going to have these kind of issues.
Vaughan, I can tell you now, the average installer doesn't even check the roof type, nor does he check the thickness of the material. So we normally try and go as thin as possible, so that we overshare components or overspec components, just as a safety factor.
Yeah. You can pick it up now.
Vaughan, you guys as a roofing material supplier, you provide all of the sheets, including the IBR, bare galv, and the alu-zinc. The I don't want to say the full range, but you've got rollers that would roll into
all of them,
profiles. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we've got 2 IBR machines, 2 corrugated, a Y deck, and in Cape Town now, and 3 springlock mills and 1 diamond deck mill that goes to site. Not all of them can roll galv, like your springlock and your diamond deck. We don't roll galv in these in these machines because it does run off on the rollers, and to clean it becomes an issue. So we don't do that in galv at all. The IBR, unfortunately, the market calls for it. There is a LSM market, low, very cheap market that calls for the thinner galv sheets, like your 0.3s, 0.4s, and the hardwares call for it. But I can say 95% of our business is mostly AZ coated material in the Cape. And hence my question was earlier or my observation was, up in Gauteng and in inland, the call for zinc coated material is much larger than obviously the coastal areas, and we have to kind of supply what's demanded, if you understand what I'm saying, in those areas. But yeah, we do make them aware of the issues if they're going to ask solar, but majority of the times it's existing roofs that have been on for 5 years that will go with solar. You know what I mean? A lot of the newer roofs will have solar now these days, but we do make them aware of the issues.
At which stage does this become a problem as far as guarantees are concerned? Maybe on your AZ roof profiles, because they have long-standing warranties, whereas a normal galvanized profile doesn't really come with a warranty, does it?
No, not in the Western Cape or your coastal regions. They don't really have warranties that last long compared to the AZ coated material. So yeah, this become an issue. But to try and claim back from the supplier is going to be a futile task. They're just going to say, well, they should have known. There's no back into their warranty.
Well, I'm also correct in saying that these warranties are also applicable to area. So you
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
shorter warranties depending. It's not a standard 20-year or standard 10-year warranty on a product.
No, not on the zinc stuff. Yeah. So there's is staggered. So the closer you get to the ocean, I think it's
5 kilometers.
Yeah, it's actually 30 kilometers. They actually don't really want to warranty. 30, yeah.
Sure.
Close to the ocean, yeah.
And the reason for that is because your coastal air. So I mean, we were busy with a site the other day where we had a combination of different roofs on there, and the installer came back to say, "Oh no, the aluminium rails are rusting." And we're going, "Well, it's not rust; it's actually salt setting on it."
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't think about it, but the site's only 7 kilometers away from the sea.
Yeah.
You can't see the sea, but it's still within range. And because there's a lot of mist that comes out that way, you're still going to have that effect of corrosion or pitting or attacking maintenance.
This is where maintenance and Jan is going to get sick of me saying this, but this is where maintenance becomes an issue on roofs. People don't believe that maintenance needs to happen on roofs, but it has to. If you're spending, the normal domestic roof costs between 250 to 300,000 rand for a new roof on a 250 square house on average. If you buy a car for that amount of money, you're either servicing it once a year or when it gets to the kilometers. So why aren't you using that same principle on a roof? Something that's protecting your entire your house context.
That's an asset.
It's an asset. And the problem is that we do not maintain. Not one roofing contractor has a maintenance plan for your roof. So he sells you the roof, he installs it, and he has a 5-year, if it leaks or something goes wrong with it, plan. But he doesn't come back and have a maintenance plan for you. So he won't say, "Yeah, I'll give you pay me 2,000." This is a number. Pay me 2,000 rand every time I come out, and I'll make sure that your warranty is valid for the next 15 years. There's not one contractor out there that will do it. They want to get in and out and move on to the next one. And
the same with the installers as well, because I mean it's an opportunity. I mean, these components need to be retightened, and the panels need to be cleaned. It's a market that's completely being missed.
I think it might be one. I think MRC offer.
Guys that are starting up now.
Yeah, MRC is one of them that offer it. They have, like, I think it's a guardian warranty, they say. But then it's the onus is on the owner of the property or the roof or the property agent to phone them once a year and say, I need to come out and maintain the roof. And there's going to be a call out fee, like you pay for a car service, you need to pay for service of your roof. And if there's components they need, they charge you for a screw or a flashing that's loose or whatever. But that's you paying for a fan belt if you need radiators or, there's a consequential cost to this. And I think that's very, very lacking in our market at the moment is the installer not taking responsibility.
Offering that maintenance plan. And that we see it every time where it comes down to the lack of installation is affecting the performance of the entire roof. And then the asset owner sits because who can they call? Listen, I got this warranty from BlueScope that everyone passed on. And they read through the T's and C's, so you immediately know everything. The story they're telling you, they've now read the T's and C's, and now they're trying to cover where they've lacked or they haven't maintained the roof at all. And the first thing is, if I go to a site, for instance, I look at the fasteners. Okay, how do the fasteners look? If the fasteners are corroded, I can bet you my bottom dollar no one's been up on that roof just to inspect, because they would have first contacted the fastener supplier to say, listen, 2 years down the line or 5 years down the line, the fastener's now failed. What do I need to do to ensure that it stays, that it keeps the sheet down? But now the whole sheet is rusted around the fastener head's gone, and then they're saying, no, but the material quality, the roof sheeting, the material quality is inferior. But just, it's lack of maintenance. And maintenance doesn't have to be so detailed, or not detailed, but so costly, where every year you need special chemicals, you need a special team with rope access and all of that. It can literally be a visual check and an overview. Okay, everything's still in good condition. Yes, by luck, the rainwater is able to remove most of the dirt and the dust off the roof, so it's fairly clean and in good nick. Get off the roof, you don't need to do anything.
Yeah. Starts with a visual inspection.
I actually have an installer with a project in Atlantis that's got exactly that problem now. He's got a alu zinc roof there, but all the screws have rusted.
Yeah.
So he's now got to remove all the screws first, reinstall all the screws, and then do the PP install.
Yeah, and then the problem there is he's removing a rusted screw. So obviously that hole that the screw made has now slightly corroded, so it's bigger. He can't, and Sebastian will be the expert here, but you can't now go and put a normal 6 mil or 5 mil, whatever the mil is, screw, because it's not going to lock that sheet in correctly. It's going to allow for too much movement. So it's a non-standard screw, non-standard fastener will come at a higher cost or different cost. So it's going to cost him more in the end.
Yeah.
And I can tell you now, Sean, on that job, they've used the incorrect fixing. They've used a class 2, the first thing they can buy at a hardware store, and because they're saving 20 cents on a fixing, now it's costing the asset owner a lot more than the 200 Rand saving that he got, or 2,000 Rand saving.
I mean, we have the same fights where we're selling a fastener for 6 Rand or 7 Rand per screw to attach the component to the roof sheets, and then the competitor will sell a screw for 1 Rand.
Yeah.
But no one will ask the question, why is there a 5 Rand difference between the screws? You know, it's... Sebastian, give us some insight on the different screws here. Why would one screw be 5 Rand or 6 Rand and 1 Rand?
Well, I've got a bit of a presentation. I can jump into it, and it delves into this if you want. I can also talk about this all day, so I'm going to keep to the presentation. Otherwise, it's going to...
Okay. Yeah.
Sean, shall we jump over to Sebastian's presentation?
Yeah, 100%. I think we've seen enough failure.
Topic of screws. I have been looking at your screw prices, and I did think that they were more expensive than...
Ricardo, cheapskate stays the cheapskate.
Can you see my presentation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the big issue that you have in solar is that you've got an aluminium frame on your solar panel, you've got aluminium profiles. And when you're fastening, you don't get aluminium fasteners because they're not strong enough. Aluminium is too soft a material to use for a screw. So you end up with an issue called bimetallic corrosion, which we're all aware of. And there are 2 factors in it. So firstly, the nobility of your metal. And that's what this table is talking about. And aluminium actually sits quite high up on that table. It's got a higher nobility than a zinc-plated steel screw, which is your typical self-drilling screw that you'll find in South Africa. So you can't use a zinc-plated carbon steel screw in an aluminium setup or a hot dip galvanized one, because you will start to have corrosion of your less noble item, which is that screw. And the threads which are holding your panels and everything in place will start to deteriorate very quickly. Now, the other issue is that it's not just the nobility, but it's also the volume of your different metals that increase or decrease your bimetallic corrosion. If you, for instance, use an aluminium profile and a stainless steel screw, the stainless steel is more noble than the aluminium, so it's going to speed up the corrosion of your aluminium. But in this scenario, we're using the stainless steel fastener. The volume of the fastener compared to the total volume of your aluminium is much, much, much less. So that increase in your corrosion is negligible. But if it were the other way around, it is noticeable. So those are the important considerations. Now in South Africa, the problem is that we all talk about a class 3 or class 4 fastener. And that's based on the Australian code, AS3566. The SANS code is a copy of it. That Australian code is being reworked currently. It doesn't currently exist, but it's for zinc-coated carbon steel fasteners. So when a installer comes into the market, they're looking for a self-drilling screw. That's what they're going to use, unless they know about bimetallic corrosion. And this is what's happening far too often in South Africa. Now, some more info on that spec. That Australian standard was designed in such a way that screw lasts for 10 years in the corrosion class that it's in a roofing application. So what that means is they consider the corrosion on the head. They don't do testing on the fastener after it's been installed. And so you've got a 10-year guarantee essentially when you're going into a roof sheeting, but not into aluminium, because once you're going into aluminium, you've got bimetallic corrosion. Now, the other thing is that the reason why zinc is used as a corrosion inhibitor is, one, it works as a corrosion inhibitor. The second is that it increases your drilling performance of your fastener. It becomes a lubricant during your drilling process, and it drills better than if you just had a plain carbon steel screw. But what that also means is that the part of the screw that is drilled through your fastener, through your profile, doesn't have a complete corrosion resistance. Now, that's okay if you're going through a roof where under the roof it's weatherproofed. But in a solar application where you're going through panels and the thread is exposed afterwards, you've got an even higher chance of that fastener corroding and corroding faster. And this is why you can't use coated carbon steel fasteners in these applications. You'll see from the pictures there on the left, the upper two screws, those have been tested in a Kirstenich test once they're off the factory floor. The picture below shows after it's been screwed through, the top of that fastener will look normal, but the bottom has started to corrode because the corrosion protection has come off. And look at what it's also done to that sheeting. And that's what you're trying to avoid with the bimetal screws. Now, what does bimetal mean? Stainless steel you want to use because it's a corrosion-resistant material. So even if it's nicked, even if it's bent, it will inherently not corrode. But the problem with austenitic stainless steels that are used for fasteners is that you can't case harden it. So you can't make it hard enough to snap through another steel. So the solution to that is that you put a carbon steel tip to it, which is your drilling tip and your thread forming, and then your clamping zone of your fastener is stainless steel. And that's a bimetallic screw. And EOT has a reputation for very good ones, because they don't. It's difficult to weld the two materials together. You get it can be brittle and lead to failure. We're able to make fasteners that avoid that. So you're able to get bimetal screws in A2 or A4 stainless steel with a hardened tip. So ultimately, what this means is that if you want solar panels, not Euler panels, to stay on your roof for the life of the panel, and the panel warranties nowadays are 25 years. Some panel manufacturers are offering 30 years. You have to use bimetal screws because a normal roofing screw is not designed for that purpose, and it will not last. It should not last more than 10 years. And this is also why we often see panels flying off roofs, even in mild storms. Now, another thing to consider is your washer. And we're talking about, Johan, you mentioned coming onto roofs and you see where the fastener is corroded and it's corroded the roof sheeting. That's to do with the class of the fastener, but more to do with the washer. And in South Africa, we've got the roofing screws that typically have an integrated washer. That's not a good idea because you need to harden your sealing material so that it doesn't distort while the screw is still turning. What your washer needs to have is a sealing material that is thick, so it can take up expansion and contraction. The sealing material needs to be resistant to oxidation. It mustn't harden over time, so it remains elastic. It must be elastic, and it must be UV stable. And it must be UV stable in South African conditions. The UV intensity in South Africa and the Southern Hemisphere, Australia is included in that, is about twice that as what you get in Europe and in Asia and in the Northern Hemisphere. That affects your roofing screws because the washer material will start to become brittle. Now, the function of your washer is sealing, and the sealing prevents water and salts and debris from getting into the part of your roof sheeting that has been exposed because you've drilled through it. But it also keeps a constant pressure during expansion and contraction. And this is also important for solar applications because you've got different expansion and contraction between your aluminium and your steel roof. If you don't have that, and you've got a cyclical load on it, that fastener will start to loosen, and you'll start to get it'll start to bend and contort the aluminium. So the washers are equally important. And now coming back to why we led to this presentation, cost of fasteners. Why are some fasteners 6 Rand? Why are some of them 1 Rand? Making a bimetal fastener is not easy. It's expensive. A2 stainless steel is more expensive than zinc-coated carbon steel. And your volumes, when you're making roofing screws, they're making billions of those every year in the factories in Asia. Your economies of scale are much higher. That reduces cost. And then the washer. Washers are expensive. Having an independent washer like this is expensive, but it is arguably one of the most important parts of your fastener. And the integrated washers are a problem for roofing, but they're even more of a problem for solar, because that won't keep that constant pressure on your installation. So that also comes down to bearing. You'll see on a roofing screw that head is about 11 millimeters typically, and your bearing area on that is that 11 millimeter diameter area. You want a larger bearing area so it doesn't bend your sheeting. You want it to spread the load, your dynamic load that you get from your wind. So a larger fastener is better. And in cases where you've got very high loads, you will use something like a seating washer, an Orkan washer, which has an even bigger sealing area and a bigger bearing area. So that's just a quick overview on why you use certain types of fasteners for solar, bimetal fasteners, and what the quality points are on the fasteners, and why you shouldn't use a roofing fastener for solar installations. Thank you.
I think you mentioned once to me before that there's something of the sea kelp in the Western Cape that increases corrosion.
So the west coast of South Africa is the most corrosive environment in South Africa, and a lot of people will think the east coast is because it's a more humid climate. But the reason why the west coast is more corrosive is because we've got the Benguela current coming from the Antarctic pushing up, and secondly because you've got an underwater escarpment, and as that current moves past that escarpment, it churns up all the dead material from your seafloor. And that is very sulfur rich. So you get sulfur bloom and you generally have a higher level of sulfur in your sea air in your salt spray. It takes 2 bacterial cycles, digestion cycles, to turn sulfur into sulfuric acid. And the corrosion that you get off the west coast, that pitting corrosion, that's from sulfuric acid. And sulfuric acid will pit through aluminium, it will pit through A2 stainless steel, and it will definitely go through carbon steel very, very quickly. If you look at the effects of sulfuric acid on carbon steel. And that is why it's an even more extreme corrosion environment than any other place in South Africa. And that needs to be taken into consideration too.
Wow. Okay. It sounds to me like the roofing guys have more issues than the solar guys. You guys are in an established market, and the solar guys, or a part of the industry, is ranting and raving around using the right size fuse and that kind of thing. But if I listen to what you guys are saying in the presentation, I mean, the thing that's supposed to last 25 years is currently not installed correctly. Johan, what do you guys? So you guys have the warranty on the sheet and the sheet coating material, or the
Yes.
coating, but how
Yes.
do you your I don't want to say your easiest way of getting out of a warranty claim is just looking at the quality of screws that have been used in the installation.
Yeah, so Coral, on that is BlueScope only manufactures the coil, the pre-painted steel. Okay, so we will never say use a EOT or Care or CorroShield fastener, the specific fastener. So
Trust me, I've tried.
Yeah, he's tried. Everyone's
So have I.
But what we do is, being born from Australian technology, is our company does have a lot of technical bulletins and fact files and all of that. So we commonly refer to any auxiliary material is look at our recommendation based on the interaction that we've tested with readily available materials. obviously that auxiliary material, being it a fastener or bracket, needs to conform to some sort of standard. And for those purposes, that AS3 3566 or whatever the standard is on the class 3 or class 4 fastener. So we will say basically it needs to be a class 3 or class 4 fastener, usually with a C4 type of corrosive environment and the use of our Colorbond Ultra Steel, which is the AZ200. We would suggest using the class 4 fastener, and then inland AZ150, where you can use the class 3 fastener. But you don't have, if you want to use the class 4 fastener, you can use it for a benign environment, for instance, or inland environment. And going on to the warranty is our warranty as per let's take it on to a car warranty, okay? Everyone has a car or knows about cars. So if I drive a Mercedes and then the engine fails, I can't blame the tire manufacturer for it, for the engine failing. If the car runs off the road and it's because of inferior tires, for instance, I can't blame Mercedes or the car manufacturer for that failure. And this is, we understand the need for different components and components that we do not manufacture ourselves to be used in conjunction with our material. And we try and educate the market extensively with technical bulletins and fact files to say, listen, look out for this. The problem, and to get back to your comment where you said the roofing guys have more problems, as I think everyone works in isolation. So the solar guys, and with all respect, is, yes, it's old, but it's fairly new technology and a new market segment that needs to, well, it's gaining traction in South Africa. But they try and reinvent the wheel, is rather have this type of forum and all of the heads combine and say, listen, we've gone through all of those learning curves. How can we support and assist you to make your lives easier, and then work with us? But the solar guy will try and punt his product without considering the substructure or the substrate, which is the metal roof, for instance, that he's installing it on, or the fastener system that's going to be used. And it's basically a breakdown of communication or just the network that's causing all of these issues. And then the second thing, which I think is the most important, is there's no policing because there's no structured forum, or I don't want to call it a watchdog, but there's no one that really has taken up the baton and say, listen, we're going to run with it and we're going to ensure that the market follows these parameters or principles to ensure that the asset owner in the long run get their money's worth.
Yeah, Johan, thanks for that. But I actually don't think I know. I've been involved in the industry for 15 years on a full-time basis. Started with solar in the year 2000. I don't know one guy that would be able to tick all of the boxes from being able to design mounting structures through to, maybe I should just move this thing a bit, so it looks like my connection is unstable. I don't know anyone, not even the building inspectors, that would be able to inspect the roof, have a look at the screws, are the screws correct, have a look at the mounting structure, is there bimetallic issues as far as this is concerned and that is concerned, what type of screws we used, how is this? I think the level of specialization for guys installing solar is insane from the point of view of what they need to know in order to make this device last that long.
It is, but there again is, and that's a valid point where you're putting a lot of actually hoping that the installer is the expert I've always believed there must be a smarter and a quicker way to do certain things. I'm not the expert in. I'm not even the expert at BlueScope, okay? But I know who to ask questions for, or if I need some knowledge. And I think it's just that thinking that we need to try and get across to the whole market is, if you don't know, don't be scared to ask. Sean is an expert on his fixing, on his bracket systems, on the different profiles, working together with the roll formers. Vaughan is a specialist on the profiles, clipping action, all of that. And Sebastian with these fastener solutions. So, but join all of those forces together and listen to everyone, and then make a calculated, not guess, but decision at the end. What's happening now is the asset owner or the person signing off the project or the feasibility is listening to the person that's submitting the quotation to do the work or doing the installation, and seeing that person as the sole expert.
Yeah.
And that burns people.
And the problem is, I mean, our installers have absolutely no clue about wind loads, dead loads, live loads, anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
They understand electrical, and we're now expecting them to be roof experts also. And the problem is that they don't see the implications of what they do on a roof as anything other than them installing a solar panel.
It's also, to add into the again that question, why are some items R6, why are they R1? That comparison of price is a comparison when you don't have the information to assess the technical differences. So you've got a lot of decisions that ultimately falls down on the person that's paying to say yay or nay. And if they're not clued up about it, and there are very few people that are clued up enough to make an educated decision like that. That's why generally for bigger projects, you've got an engineer who's a client representative. But in residential, you don't. And they're just looking at costs and go, well, why is the one 60,000, the other one's 80,000? And if the person can't explain that to them, then they're going to go with the 60,000, because why are you going to pay 20,000 Rand more? But if you understand why, because it's actually going to last, and you can sleep at night when there's a windstorm because you're not worried that the thing's going to blow off, or it's not going to blow off and damage your neighbor's car, then you're going to spend 80,000 Rand.
Now, just to follow up to Sebastian, we chatted to an EPC about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they mentioned that, well, they can't really specify a product in a tender because the engineers are speccing that it needs to be a mounting structure, it needs to be aluminium, it needs to be this, and it needs to be that. And that's as far as it goes. So it boils down to price. Yes, it was an aluminium product that we chose. Yes, it did comply to some standards. But for example, again, there are components that are inferior to other products, which have higher and lower pull-out forces, which ultimately is going to, I mean, we're talking about guys trying to sign PPAs here, expecting an installation to last for 20 years. And then I listen to mounting structure companies that go, no, we haven't lost a single system yet. But yet, I mean, how often would you go back to the same mechanic that serviced your car the first time and you left there with a problem? You don't go back to him. You go back to somebody else to try and get the problem fixed. Otherwise, you end up paying twice. I think the same thing applies here.
Yeah.
My little 5 cents on this, and going back to Carl's question, is that the experts like ourselves are always left out of the loop until it's too late. We are always the last to be called in when there's an issue, but we're not called in at design phase. Majority of the times we're not called in design phase. The installer will be there and he's representing and he's saying, okay, I'll use this product, this product, this product, this product. And he's the voice. And then when the proverbial shit hits the fan, sorry, then we are called in. Sorry, can you bleep that out, Carl? But
call the popo.
Yeah, the popo hits the fan. Then we are called in to try and mop it up, and I think that's the issue. I don't think there needs to be a policeman. You're right, there needs to be some kind of policing, but how do you solve it quicker is get us more involved, or try and get involved more at the design phase, and then talking to, be it a domestic client or a commercial client, and just give them the right information up front, from the right people. I think that's the right way to do it. But I know it's hard. We don't always have that face-to-face interactions, because it's we have this middleman mentality in this country.
Yeah, but the problem is that your second installation is more expensive than your first installation.
Yeah.
Because there's a repair cost and a reinstallation cost. So that whole project is worth nothing at the end of the day. That initial payback.
Yeah, you've lost that money.
You've lost everything on it.
Yeah. Never mind the disruption to a commercial buildings trade, or someone's roof leaking and
100%
water dripping on their 5-year-old child's head. It's these things, the consequential cost of these things that no one takes into account. And that's what I'm saying is, it's always reactive than proactive. And it's from, can I say it's from the client sides most of the time, or the installer? Because a lot of times our clients are installers, and that's just my 5 cents on that whole situation. Is that
a cost conscious market will always be reactive, never proactive, and that's the problem. And it's difficult if you try and supply a quality material, selling it on the benefits to a cost sensitive market. And to make people understand, look, if I only have 100 Rand in my wallet, I can only buy for 100 Rand. You go to the shop and you want something now, and the general project funding and allocation is set to a budget. It can be a budget or figure that was set 2 years ago. Inflation and all of those things went up or increased the price, and they haven't kept up with those price increases. So now it's that mentality. How do you justify, and going to a QS or an asset owner, how do you really justify the cost of ownership when you have to make the decision now on a capex budget that was set for that? There's a lot of hoops. So we do understand both sides of the market, or both sides of the coin. But again, it's just getting back to keeping the communication and the lines open and that network, so that you don't sit with a surprise, either when you have to pay for it or when it fails.
Yeah, I think there is a solution if I think about it quickly. So the Association for Renewable Energy Practitioners has a checklist at the end of the installation, where you tick to say how many panels in a string, how many inverters, what are the serial numbers, and that kind of thing. And I'm thinking what you should be able to do is to have a pre-installation checklist where you question what the type of roof is, just to get the guys to start thinking about what it is they're actually installing on. Because the entire solar installation, if you look at the turnkey project and you look at all of the boxes you have to tick, looking at roofing material, the associated roofing screws that are on the material at the moment, everything becomes completely overwhelming. And I think if we create a pre-installation checklist, maybe something that the guys can use.
We've already done that. We have a checklist for every roof profile type that asks you all those questions. And then we went as far as developing Docu app, which allows an installer to go to site first and capture everything that it needs to capture based on what he's installing. So, for example, if he's installing on a tile roof, it's going to ask him what are the truss spacings. It's going to ask him what is the batten spacing, what type of material, is it a clay, is it a ceramic?
But that's
if it's a flat roof, it's going to ask him what type of coverings on the roof. I mean, it's small things, but the difference between a bitumen covering and, for example, a chipstone creates different friction coefficients on a roof, which determines what type of ballasting you're going to use on the roof. So all those things are applicable.
Yeah. Is that a K2 app or a K2 list?
It's a K2 app and a K2 list.
Can we white label it?
We can white label it. It's actually free of charge. No, but it's serious. It's free of charge. So anybody can use it.
Yes.
The information is just in Docker app. It's not product or brand specific, but it allows the installer to ask the right questions when he's on site.
Okay, that's great.
It allows him to take photos. It allows him to take notes of information that he needs, whether it's electrical or roofing related. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
But it helps him with the site inspection.
Sean, thank you very much. Guys, I see it's 5 minutes past 3 already, so we are a bit over our time for our 1 hour meeting. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Johan, what I would like to do is, it would be great if I can contact you and just get some information on those white papers you guys have written with the information and the specifications of the different screws. It would be great to get some of that information out to industry.
Yes.
And then Sebastian, I don't know how many suppliers you supply with your bimetallic screws, but it's obvious that it's not enough. If I look at what's going on roof structures, and then Vaughan, maybe the thing that we can do with you guys is to maybe just create awareness around different roof profiles, especially the, what do you call them, AZ, Zinc.
Yeah, ZA.
ZA. AZ.
Yeah.
The AZ roof profiles, just to kind of get it out there that the guys understand that there are different profiles. And maybe, Sean, what we can do is we can attach pictures to the different profiles of what the correct mounting structure would be, just to kind of highlight it, that there are different mounting structures for different roof profiles.
Almost as simple as that, but I'm sure we can do it.
Yeah.
Well, even if it's just an example, it could just be to create awareness, so that guys can start thinking about this, because in the solar industry, roofing, roof coverings, and the type of screws that are being used is the last thing that solar installers think about. Yeah. And by the sounds of things, it should be one of the first.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, thank you very much. Does anybody want to just have a final closing statement before we conclude the meeting? This has been extremely interesting, and we will definitely share it on our social media profile. I'll send you guys.
Maybe if we get some questions from the video, we can actually respond to that on the next call.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd like to do this again, and maybe just set up almost like an agenda to go through going forward, because I think this is quite valid in our industry. Is the different parts talking to each other, and maybe if we can think of someone else that might be beneficial to this, add them to it. But I do think this is quite necessary going forward.
I think what I've enjoyed about this session. When it started, I was thinking, maybe we should have invited other guys. But when you've got a smaller group, you can keep the discussion a lot more focused.
Yeah.
And this has been amazing. I think each guy has had an opportunity to give some valuable information about what they do in their field of speciality. And maybe what we can do in future presentations is make it open to the public to join. And then maybe that would be the kind of thing that you would have with the association, where you could join a members month-end meeting and have a presentation on the product you manufacture and what guys who do solar installation should be looking out for. I think that'll be valuable.
Maybe on the next round we should include somebody from the insurance industry to get their perspective on what they're experiencing.
Yeah,
sounds good.
I think insurance would be amazing
Yeah.
to have the input. Guys, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Perfect.
Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, eh?
right. Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Thanks, Sebastian. Thanks,
Good
Sean.
one.
Thanks for setting it up.
Anytime. Have fun. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye. Bye.